We have a lot to do tonight, as usual. I got several correspondence over. I've been away for the last week and a half, so when I came back, I got several emails from Vernon. And as you know, Vernon has pulled out of the study committee. I'll share the language I got with you guys. The first email I got, well, before I get into that, so we will discuss that probably in depth. We're going to, I've referred that to Chris Leopold, and Ron Frank and I will talk about that. But we do have an agenda. I think we'll go over the articles and determine how to move forward. We do have at the start public comments, which I want to start with. I would ask that everyone fill out the form at all of these study committee meetings. Amy passes around a sheet, and we ask that you fill in your name and your town, and that when you speak, please stand, say your name and your town at that time as well. Because of the intense nature of what's going on these days, well, if there is time at the end of the meeting, we'll try to make time for public comment then as well. Does that make sense for everyone? Okay, so shall we start from the left? Any of you guys have something to say? And you? No? Do you have something to say, Jen?
Well, this is the only time you're going to allow us to talk about.
As I just said, that if their time allows at the end of the meeting, which hopefully it most likely will, because we tend to do that. But if we go extremely long, but yes, now's the time. Would be the ideal time to talk.
Well, I'll just share with you that I have spent a lot of time
talking. Can you say your name and your town?
Jody Normando, you want me to stand? Jody Normando, Dummerston, and I have spent a lot of time talking to people throughout the state. I've spent a lot of time with people in Huntington, finding out what they're doing, what they have done, and how they feel about Act 246. I have talked to an ex-superintendent I've been in communication with 2 or 3 superintendents. This one's an ex who is dead set against this. He says that it does not save money, it does not bring equity. I think throughout the state there are a lot of people that are in the same predicament that we are and have the same questions and being upset with what the state is doing. I think we're living in a little fishbowl right here, and you know my feelings about how the study committee has been going right down the one path, and I sure hope that you take a vote to slow it down and study, because there are many, many options. Donna Russo-Savage talked about options, and what she said, and I haven't gotten a complete answer, I've written to her, is that if we pulled out of the supervisory union, there were many more options. So I don't even know what that means, but there were just so many options there, and dealing with what other people have done, how they've combined. It's a very interesting process, and I wish we could take our time and study the whole process and not just the accelerated merger.
Thanks, Judy. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
The only thing Tom Ehrenberg, Putney, the only thing I have is a quick question. The proposal that I sent you was tabled last meeting because everybody had not gotten it. So I'm just flagging that.
Yeah, so I assume that when we go through the articles, however we determine to go through the articles, when we talk about leadership council, I'm sure someone will address that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, are we good? All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm abstaining, I'm abstaining.
No, I'm abstaining. I wasn't here.
Okay, 2 abstentions.
I'm abstaining because I missed half of it.
Okay. All right, they pass. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so let's start out with the Vernon situation. Does that make sense? So the emails I returned to on Monday night were that Matt Coombs resigning, and an email from Walter saying that he was still the voting member, but Mike Hebert was going to be replacing Matt's position. And then I got an email saying that, let's see, do we have the language? So there was a motion so they had a special meeting on Monday. I guess they had a meeting last Monday night, a special meeting last Monday night, and then a special meeting this past Monday night. And at that this past Monday, there was a motion by Gina Dyer and seconded by Deb Hebert, approved for the Vernon, motion by Gina Dyer and seconded by Deb Hebert, approved for the Vernon School District to withdraw immediately from the Act 46 Study Committee, and Vernon School District shall not be a member of any Act 46 district in which Vernon is only an advisable district. That was the language. So he just wanted to let me know that. I sent him an email back and thanked him for his email and asked him, well, one could easily assume that he was resigning from the study committee, but as the study committee is an independent group, an independent committee, I asked him whether this was also his way of resigning, but he hasn't responded to that email, but I expect he'll do so in the next couple of days because we would need a resignation from him and Mike Hebert for them to actually resign. So I asked Ron and Frank to contact Chris Leopold, and I spoke to Chris Leopold today. And shall I just share with you what I learned, and then Frank and Ron will. After talking to him for quite some time, at my request, I asked him to contact the AOE to request a formal opinion as to how Vernon's actions affect the school board. We could ask Chris Leopold to create a legal opinion, but since obviously, ultimately, the legal opinion, or the opinion lies within the AOE, it made sense just to ask him to directly contact them, since they were the people, ultimately the AOE makes the decision on this issue, so why would we be spending money paying Chris Leopold to come up with an opinion when ultimately we needed one from them. So Don Russo-Savage has told Chris that she would be able to get back to him in the next couple days. So we will be hearing about that. Chris did say, I asked him, whether he could share more about his thoughts on this for us so that I could share it with you guys. And he said that legally, the big question is the vote, how we move forward. He suggested that we keep doing what we're doing and wait for the feedback, the opinion from the AOE. He did cite statute 706D, saying legally there's a requirement to allow a vote on this issue that we've been discussing if we choose to have it be a vote that goes to the voters. So that board would, under state statute, be required to put that vote before the Vernon electorate. He said if it is not done, then it is a violation of duty. And I have a copy of that statute here, and enough for you guys, well, not for everyone in the room, but there is a copy of the statute here if we want to review it, but I don't know if we need to at this stage. But Ron and Frank, do you want to chime in?
He just kind of reiterated that the question about the board's authority to withdraw from the study committee, that there's nothing in the statute on it, but his feeling is that one board shouldn't be able to rescind the study committee process by withdrawing from the study committee. And as Alice said, that he's going to, on our behalf, check with the Agency of Education. I believe they're going to review it with the Attorney General's office as well.
Alice?
Yeah.
This is, I think until we get an opinion from the agency, I think talking about what it might mean is not really productive. Title 16 powers of school boards. It says the school boards are the legislative power of the municipality, and you don't give that up unless it's excluded and taken away. And appointing members to committees, being part of committees, any of those sort of operations are within the legislative authority of the municipality, the school district. It's the same issue that came up when Dummerston replaced their representative, and the Secretary of State had a different view. And so I think rather than talk about what it might mean, better wait for the opinion.
I haven't seen an opinion from the Secretary of State about the Dummerston situation. But that's the advice of our legal counsel, is that we could proceed with consideration as we've been doing. Thoughts?
Well, I guess it's, if the Vernon representatives are also resigning from the committee, then whether the board has the authority to make them resign is a moot point.
I haven't, as I said earlier, it's
But he's not here, so.
right. So one thing, what we could do is look at the report, release it to the Agency of Education, not vote on it officially as a group tonight, wait for the response from the Agency of Education and perhaps the Attorney General, and at that point, vote officially one way or the other. Yeah.
But in order for it to go to the agency, don't we have to vote on it to send it to the agency?
Right, we would be releasing it. We could change it afterwards, but this starts the process of Donna Russo Savage looking at it, sharing it with the Secretary. Chris has said we could start that process and then have an official vote whether to move it forward officially or not.
And I think too, for right now, because we're not actually clear on the status, is if we voted to release it to go up, it would just be they were absent for the vote. Vernon was absent for the vote. It doesn't, and if everybody else voted to send it, then it would still go, just be people were absent from the vote.
But in which case then are we approving it? I mean,
No, I mean, Chris Leopold's saying you're actually just sending it up to the AOE for review. And then there would be a formal process after that. And by the time you need to do that, we would have the opinion from the agency head.
That just seems different than what we said in preparation for this meeting in terms of what we would be voting for it. In order for it to go forward. So they're doing something special.
Well, you're voting to release it to the agency.
And what does that mean?
And that's not you.
So that's,
But they're review.
so she hasn't gotten it to, Donna Russo Savage appreciates having a pretty good draft to review in preparation for releasing it to the Board of Ed. And so that's what we would be doing. In no way would we be releasing it to the Board of Ed. And that's what this second vote would do, is to release it to the Board of Ed.
This came up as recently as last night in Dummerston. By sending it to the AOE, these things are not finalized. We would expect back and forth with the agency on several of these articles. That's just the way the process goes.
But we would be then voting to do this merger in the way that's outlined, even though there's negotiations and what those
Right.
what the specifics are. In principle, that's what we're going to do.
Right.
Well, I think we could reserve not to send up the sort of the beginning of the report and the end of the, well, it wouldn't be the beginning of the report, it would be, I think, Article 1 and the final article. Do you follow me?
I don't know why we would need to send it.
Well,
out.
just because that has the language, the mud language in it. And we might not want to consider that until we have, do we have copies of the report?
I didn't make copies of the leads. I think people have.
Yeah,
The one
we've
from the
sent-
last meeting is probably is
Alice, it's a little hard to hear. This is a big room.
Oh, you would like us to speak louder?
Yes, please.
It's even hard to hear over this way. It
Yeah,
echoes.
Yeah.
It echoes funny. I wasn't at the last meeting, so if we're gonna look at the articles, can somebody quickly email them to me? Oh, you have, never mind, Kim is,
Isn't there a new copy of the article since the last
Can we
meeting? though?
print those? Do we have those we could print?
What is the date on your copy, Kim?
I have
March 22nd.
Yeah, we're up to April
April
14th.
14th, I have
There's an April 6th and a March
Can we
3rd.
get that, Ron, and print it out? Lyle, can you do that for us? Is that, okay.
so, Alice, I'm not sure if I was
Yeah.
clear on what, and maybe I wasn't hearing really what you and Rich were talking about. So could you just summarize one more time what the steps are?
So what do you want to speak? What we could do tonight is not, so what we could officially release a report if we determined to do so. We could release it to the Board of Ed. But that doesn't seem appropriate since we've requested them to see how Vernon's actions affect our process. So we could vote to give it to the board, to the agency of ed to start to look at, which we would need to do anyway. And then when we next meet, we could do the official release.
So
And
by
that,
our,
Chris said we could certainly do that, and other boards have acted like that too.
so by our voting to send it up that way, we would be saying, we're thinking seriously on this, but we have not slammed down the gavel and said we are for sure doing it.
Correct.
Is that what everybody was trying to figure out? Or were you guys are all clear on that?
No, well, I thought we were sharing all along with the AOE this report. I thought that there was back and forth all along, and so what is to be gained by us voting? Can't we just give it to the AOE and get their thoughts on it? I don't understand why we would do a vote when it's so unclear if we can really release this without a necessary district participating, with that still up for consideration.
And I thought it took this study group to say we are committing to this path before we send it to the AOE, knowing that there's some negotiation that would go on with that, but that we wouldn't say, I mean, that was my assumption from the very beginning, that in order for it to go to the AOE, we would have to make it as a group a decision to say, this is the path we are in principle saying we're going to choose, knowing that there might be some issues regarding the individual articles, but that in principle this is the larger path that we're choosing as a study group.
I would say that it depends on the motion and what we are calling it. We would not be calling it, I would suggest that it would not be the final report. Right, this is the, yeah.
Is it true that, I mean, it has been going back and forth all along, right?
I don't know how many,
She's had, early versions of the report,
Okay.
I don't think she's seen it recently.
as recently as, maybe early to mid-March.
Okay.
So the last three.
So, yeah, I mean, to Christina's question, what's the difference then between the last version she saw and this version she saw requiring a vote or not?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go through past reports to indicate them. I mean, just based on some basic revisions, Article 1 is the same.
No, I think Beth doesn't mean what's different in the report, Ron, but rather what's different in our voting to send it up.
Oh.
I mean,
Right, Beth?
Yes, yeah, why do we have to vote on this version going up and we didn't have to vote on the prior versions going up?
I don't think we need to. I think it might confirm us a slot when they do the agenda. I mean, we don't have to show up for that slot. I think the next meeting would determine that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not set on it. I'm sharing options. Why are you smiling, Christina?
Because he said, God bless you.
Okay, I thought you'd been smiling and I'm like
No,
trying
I
to
smiled at
understand.
Tom saying, God
Okay.
bless you as well. I apologize. I'm smiling.
So what would it mean then to not vote at all today and to not send it forward until we've had a response back.
I,
I'm
you
just
know,
curious.
I just think it'd be a respectful use of her time, so she's not, you know. I don't think it would mean much to us, but I think it would be a better use of her time to have it, to look through it without having to rush through it. Yeah, but that's,
What is our absolute deadline?
Well, doesn't it sort of depend on if Vernon?
July 2019.
Yeah.
No, there's an absolute deadline that the state has to look at, had to have a meeting to look at this, right?
May 17th.
But
What do you
they
think?
have to get it in order.
But it can't be dropped up to them at May 17th, right?
No, we would want to get it to them by next week. We
So
would want
that's
to
our
vote.
absolute deadline.
What do you- What do you think, Amy?
Dummerston's position after our meeting last night, I think it would, from Dummerston's perspective, it would be wise to, I mean, I'd be okay with us submitting, like we have in the past, a
Mhm.
draft for them to look through and flag any issues. But I think it might be unproductive, because I know Dummerston hasn't had the whole time to go through the entire document yet as a group to discuss. We only got through part of it last night, so, you know,
That makes sense.
yeah. So, you know, I'm all for sending it up there unofficially to say, here, this is our latest, we think we're getting closer, at maybe wanting to do something, we don't know for sure yet, but this is,
I mean, we could say that this is very close, not all boards have had an opinion. That's good to know, because tonight we're going to talk about that stuff.
we got through a few articles.
Hold on, yeah.
At this point, should we talk about our opinions before we go any farther, so we can, at the end, decide whether or not we want to send this up with the opinions? That way, we're using this as a work time versus a time to chat.
Yeah, you want to go through it article by article, or how do you want to do it? We don't allow that, but we can,
Alex, while we're
Yeah.
waiting for Lyle to come back with copies, Monday, the meeting with folks from the VSBA and stuff that happened.
yeah.
I was at that meeting, and one of the things that they, and people that were there, please correct me if you didn't hear it the same way I heard it, but I heard very clearly that they suggested that we do not have two options listed in our report as the accelerated and then going to the mud. That they advised us to not do that. One, because it makes the report cleaner and easier, and also when it goes to a vote to the electorate in the towns, that it's cleaner, that it's not a, if this doesn't pass, then we're automatically doing this, because that was viewed as confusing and things like that. And I don't know if we need to do any sort of movement towards doing that differently, or just send it the way we've had it and see what they say.
Well, there's certainly a lot of opinions about that article, and that's obviously a solid recommendation coming from them, and that makes sense, and I think we should talk about that. I'm wondering if, Amy, now would be a good time rather than later. Is it okay for you to share your notes since we're waiting for Lyle? So Amy's gonna report on the meeting, because I was not.
And hopefully Frank will jump in. So, there were about,
Did your notes include who was there?
yes,
Thank you.
yeah, there were enough study committee members there that, you know, it was official minutes.
I just was curious if you want to start like you would with the normal minutes, who was there?
There was 21 people, all excluding the folks from Nicole Mace, Nikki South, Don Russo Savage, Brad James, and Jeff Francis, yeah. There were members of the public there. There was, like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 6 members of 5 or 6 members from the study committee, some being alternates, but they were all there. And then Steve Dale, two consultants were there. Steve Dale was there for the Wyndham Central district that he's working with. And then another gentleman I did not recognize. His name wasn't. Oh, Steve Sanborn, yep. And then a couple, Chris Mays from the Reformer, and then Howard Wise Tisman from VPR was there. But they started out the meeting by showing us a map that's available on the AOE website. Talks about the successful mergers of 10 supervisory unions in the state so far, with 2 more in the waiting stage post-vote. There are 4 more pending votes in supervisory unions and across the state, and there are 18 supervisory unions that have formed formal study committees. Frank really sort of framed the discussion by raising certain sort of continuous concerns that our group and the public have had, and one was what the thing that Ricky mentioned was the format of the vote. You know, should we offer a single item, or you know, is it wise to offer if not this, then that kind of scenario? He talked about, Frank also mentioned the concern about slowing the process down and wanted feedback on the alternatives that we have taken a look at. And the third point was concerns about retaining local input, particularly regarding governance and budget. And then also Erin, who was present from Guilford, she asked for clarification about at-large candidates. If you have a totally at-large board, you know, who can actually be elected in the initial go-around. And Donna Russo-Savage spoke mostly during the meeting about the different phases. You know, there's an accelerated phase where everybody's listed as necessary, and if it fails, then you take the time to regroup. Let's see. You cannot go, let's see, the second phase was the reds, which includes the side-by-side, the layered, or Union Elementary, or the mud options. And she recommended that if a mud option was being considered, to include specific wording in the articles of agreement about how that mud will operate. What they have found in the past is that the unions, supervisory unions that have successfully merged into a MUD have contacted the AOE and basically said, well, now we're a MUD, what do we do? How do we run ourselves? You know, so she felt it was very helpful to have that outlined in there ahead of time. She talked about the conventional merger. You know, you can, with that one, go outside of your supervisory union boundaries, and she indicated that there was some questions about size. Conventional has to be about 900 students, and it can be pre-K to 12 and to form a supervisory district. Going back to the red versions, it can be either 4 districts or 1,250 ADM students. And you can, with the phase 2, the reds, you can go outside your SU boundaries. And then she also outlined a 4th one, which was non-merging districts, which we all know is you're required to look at your district, talk with your neighbors, and present a proposal to the State Board of Education. And she said the key thing there is going to be proving to the state board that this is the best way for you to proceed as a district that benefits your students and the taxpayers. She emphasized that the incentives are really transition funds to a new system. She said, you know, I think it made me think of our case where Brattleboro has less to gain financially in terms of the tax incentives and going to a flat base for everybody. Whereas, like Dummerston or Putney might gain more, and she talked about it going like this, where everybody's meeting, these incentives, rather than going boom or boom up, everybody's bringing everybody to the one rate, flat rate. Voting membership, 3 structures, which we are all familiar with, totally at large, and this is where Aaron's question came into play. If you're going with the totally at large model, anybody who's an advisable district, you won't be allowed to have a board member run for office during the first go-around. They all have to be necessary districts to have a board member run for a position on a unified board. And then she talked about the hybrid model, which we have discussed at length, and then the strictly proportional model as well. Frank asked, I thought, a good question about, given our current supervisory union's cohesion in terms of structure, what's the rationale for us not to move ahead? And Donna Russo Savage said that Act 46 is not designed for supervisory unions that have a cohesive structure. And the reply was really, why not go for the benefit of the students and the incentives for the taxpayers? Brad James, there was a question from the public about the education fund and where the incentives are coming from, and that Brad James addressed that. That when, as the merged supervisory districts now, their base will be lower, therefore they will be paying less into the education fund, and as a result of that, our base rate potentially could increase statewide. He emphasized also that the efficiencies, might offset that some, but it, was something that was being looked at. And let's see, there's a lot of information on the AOE website, as we all know. They have a document on there that they presented to the legislators that's specifically about the board membership. And I need to give that to Barb to post the link on the SU, our webpage. But it talks about the different features and compares them. And then in terms of the local governance piece and budgetary input, she thought, and Nicole Mace also agreed that the leadership councils really could fill that void. Could be in a structure familiar to the local communities and like our current school board system, and that they could really address educational programming and its quality at the local level and carry that information up to the unified board. What a leadership council doesn't do is, they wouldn't be holding a town meeting event about the school. And she suggested that that the study committee, or not study, the supervisory district member for that particular town, or members for that particular town, would be asked to go present at town meeting to give a report to the town, like our current state legislators do, to update us. She also suggested in terms of, involving communities, rotating, the board where we meet, where we meet, sort of like we do now with these different meetings. And then also formalizing a structure for the leadership council so that the district member from the board that sits on the leadership council, is the conduit of local concerns up to the unified board. And she said there was, we could certainly add language to our articles about providing the leadership council with budgetary input, And then I think that was about it. Great.
Anyone, who here was there?
Erin was there, she's in the audience.
Yeah.
Christina was there, Mark was there, David was there, Ricky was there, and myself and Frank. And Bob Woodward was there from the UHS board. Oh, and Sean Murphy, sorry. Sean was there.
Okay, any more about this? Any questions? What's up, Jen?
I was there too, and she talked about the numbers as not being written in stone, that they would look at different situations and dealing with the numbers.
Thanks, Amy. All right, does it make sense, everyone, for us just to go through it as we have been doing?
I think so.
To start, can you just let me know which boards have not gone through the entire report? Is it just Dummerston for the most part? Yeah, just Dummerston? Okay.
The high school, the VHS board has gone through it, but it's been over a month. Or almost a month. Yeah.
April 4th.
Okay.
Right, that will, yeah, but by the time we meet again, it'll be a month, so. So
But
anything
we're
that's a
not
month.
really, it's the town boards that actually have a say. We're just here as guests essentially of the Brattleboro Town Board, so I don't think the BOHS board really.
No, but
But we do appreciate the input.
Wanted to share.
Yes. Thank you. I would say, we haven't gone through it like asking board members specifically for input, but we went through it in a forum, article by article.
You want feedback from that meeting?
From which,
The public forum, the things that we heard from the public? Or
I don't
just
think
from
we,
the board?
yeah, we want feedback from the boards as we go through the articles.
Because the board, as Jill said, the board hasn't really sat down and discussed it.
Right, so you're gonna need to do that if you've not done that.
Okay, I mean, we had a forum, David, so during the forum, you brought up any concerns that you had.
Okay. So
And I think that as we go through this, there were some concerns from the Brattleboro town reps that we could put into each one of those and we bring up at that time.
yeah, so if you had reviewed it with those board members in the room,
Yeah, the board
Yeah.
members were there and the town reps actually have had feedback. on this.
and you guys have done that. And when do you guys next meet? Because, you know, you're gonna have to meet sooner, right?
And then we should say, Putney did go through article by article.
Yeah.
Your next meeting, Amy, is May 10th.
10, yeah.
So can you have an earlier meeting?
I can ask our board chair.
Yeah.
And Guilford went through it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious because we didn't get through this last night, and there have been changes in this draft, which was just given to us last night, so I'm just curious if the boards have gone through the most recent draft, and what the changes would
Yeah, the
be.
changes, and we can review that at each point here, were submitted from the study committee and feedback from boards that were pretty consistent. So as we go through an article, I can help identify what those things were.
And so how far did you guys get through? Well, just when we go through it, I mean,
Yeah.
Christina, just let us know at what point you're sort of stopping. You don't have feedback from your boards. Okay, so let's start. First page is good? Yeah? I'll just,
Second page, third paragraph, there was some new language that was requested. Currently, several schools in WSESU do not offer comprehensive extended day summer programming. We included that as part of the opportunities to expand programming, so that was a request to just more wordsmithing than anything else. So I think that was it in terms of the executive summaries.
all the extra copies went to the public, right?
We have more.
What? You're good? Yeah. So if anyone wants one and they don't have one, they're over there. Okay. Thanks. Okay, anything else on the third page, guys?
Second to last paragraph on the page. We reviewed it more in the form of the PowerPoint. From Dummerston, there was a requested to address the wording in that paragraph.
So signed enough there, in this paragraph or the PowerPoint?
In the PowerPoint. No,
Okay.
I don't know if it's the same wording, but I have it, I wrote my notes for the PowerPoint in here, so.
Who's the keeper of the PowerPoint now?
Frank
Frank
is
is-
the latest.
Frank's the latest, so do you want to share those with Frank if you haven't done so, maybe in another work, yeah? Okay, page 4. Any thoughts, guys?
I have a question
Yeah.
on page 4. I know at our budget meetings, we set the pay of the directors at each budget meeting. Is that standard for budgets?
At each, when you're developing your budget for the entire year.
Yes.
Yeah. Each
Well,
one is-
Well,
it
if-
comes from the floor in Putney, we,
well, that's unusual.
however,
That's
You
unusual.
load it into your budget.
however it's done, if we
Yeah.
set the stipend for directors each year, can we actually state a solid number for savings in this document? Because that's going to depend on what it's set at. I mean, we know this is probably it,
Yeah.
but can we realistically say this is absolutely an amount of savings if that number could theoretically change?
And yeah, what assumptions went into developing that savings?
So the subcommittee that submitted, I don't have that
Yeah.
spreadsheet here, but they submitted a proposal, that's what this is based on. And I think, you know, the example of potential cost savings is the key to
I
this.
think it was, were we estimating 3?
3,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was,
3 and then 4 for this year.
Yeah.
did we do that? Okay.
And that was based on 9 members, and if you go to 8, it'll be a little bit different.
I mean, would you be more comfortable, Ian, saying just referring to savings rather than 24,000? I understand.
Maybe, it's not a huge thing, it's just, it struck me as odd that we have, hard numbers for something that could change every year. But you're right, it does say potential, so I guess that does cover it.
Does
I
that
mean, the third bullet there, increasing the student-teacher ratio and flexible staffing within a 3 to 5 year period, approximate $1 million savings. You know, we've looked at comparing the special ed, 300,000 with the staffing changes. Frank has done a model on taxes with a $500,000 savings. So, you know, and then you saw the PICUS report that had more like a 2 point, I don't know if it was even higher than that. So again, potential, I think that's where we're looking at that example.
Yeah. Yeah, Chip.
It says to be developed further with a star. What else might we be able to see under that? Is there a plan by somebody to fill that out, or is that just
I
there?
think that was actually left over from when it was
Yeah.
less developed.
It was. So we should get rid of that star.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you probably want to get rid of the whole paragraph, the
Yeah.
whole parentheses,
Yeah.
right?
Cut it out.
The what?
The
The whole
sentence.
parentheses just say examples of potential
Oh.
cost savings, and leave it at that, right?
So page 4,
To that same
Yeah.
discussion, I
Yeah.
guess, regarding the compensation, we talked about that in Guilford a little bit, and about the extended responsibility of this particular board member versus current board responsibility, and whether, I think some board members now make that amount as their stipend, and would that be appropriate with all the additional, because they're gonna be the chair of their leadership council, have subcommittees on both the leadership council probably, and subcommittees on the district board. And so we were questioning that, the time commitment and that stipend, and whether that was comparable, sensible.
Yeah, is BUHS, is it 1,000 or 2,000? 2. Yeah, so for BUHS it's 2, the chair is 3. And there's multiple committees that you serve on. Probably
The standard was supposed to serve on 3 committees. BOHS board members supposed to sit on, it's designed to sit on 3 committees. And that doesn't include like negotiations and that kind of stuff, but when those come up.
So can we quickly review this? So Brattleboro is 5, what is Brattleboro now?
We just got a raise.
And, yeah,
5 for the chair and 3 for the, that
the
came from the
members.
floor at our town meeting.
so
Was
Putney,
unsurprised.
Putney also just got a raise, we're now $1,000 for all members, and we sit on lots of committees.
Guilford is either 600 or 800.
After taxes, it's under 600.
Right, but
Yeah.
it's 8, but that's 8, and that's the chair's 8 as well.
Yep, it's the same.
We're all the same, like Putney, and Dummerston is
500.
right for everyone. Okay.
Vernon is like 4,000.
4,000, and the chair is more? The chair is 5.
So the leadership council was kind of a question. The leadership council doesn't have any stipends, right? The way we put this together?
Correct.
And then so the person who's serving on the leadership, or on the unified board and also being on the leadership council. And that'll be slightly different. Say in Guilford, you've only got 1 school. In the case of the Brattleboro rep, and we only have 2 reps now coming in the new governance, that unified board member will have to go to more meetings.
Well, the at-large would probably be in Brattleboro. I would imagine.
I think there was some concern at their, I think that was one of the concerns that people had during our meetings, and it came actually from principals and staff, that to have an at-large member, say Putney, coming into sitting down at a meeting that has no relationship really with that town, at school, they didn't feel like that would make more sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, you probably don't.
No, and I mentioned that at the last meeting.
Yeah, I think that people were concerned that it should be a Brattleboro rep at those meetings. So it would mean that the at-large issue was not happy to the, if we went with that, then the Brattleboro reps would actually have more meetings to go to, because there's 4 groups. Early Head Start, EES, and the Head Start, and then the 3 elementary schools. So that.
Or maybe the schools could, maybe we should talk about this when we talk about leadership councils. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or board makeup. I have some specific thoughts on that I want to bring up when we talk about the board makeup.
So, do we want to change this language in any way now?
Just delete that parenthesis.
Do we want to just, what do you think, Beth?
Yeah, I think we were just discussing the perhaps imbalance between workload and the stipend. And then additionally, the leadership council is essentially performing many of the duties that we all currently do as a board, and we get stipends. And the leadership councils were not really discussing a stipend. So we just discussed the issue that existed, not necessarily what our proposed solutions were.
And I suggest that it's a valid concern, and we say something like stipends for unified board members might represent savings.
Yeah, take dollars out.
Well,
Or
so why don't we talk about that
at that
at
time.
that time?
All right. Anything else?
And I do think the potential at the top already makes it.
Okay. Yes.
We can't hear you, Rich.
No, I just said that I think the
Yeah.
potential already does do that.
Right.
Makes it.
So, yeah, so we're going in circles a bit, and I understand that. Shall we, anything else on this page, or?
The necessary advisable, we're just skipping for right now, right?
Well, I suggested we could do that, and if that's,
I don't know
everyone's
what we
basically in
can say.
agreement on that, we'll skip that. Richard looks concerned. Okay, so skip that until we hear back from the agency of ed. Yeah.
Was the wording on the email that got forwarded about Vernon the same as the wording of the actual motion from the Vernon board?
I can check the one I got from Walter that I forwarded to you.
Because what somebody was talking about with the accelerated option, all the towns are necessary. The wording on the email specifically stated that it only applied to mergers in which Vernon was advisable. Which would mean they would still be involved in the vote for an accelerated merger if one were to go through.
Or a mud that
Well,
were
No,
necessary.
it's not.
The language is,
It's the same in the email as
in the Vernon School District shall not be a member of any Act 46 district in which Vernon is only an advisable district.
So they would still be involved in the vote for
As a necessary.
accelerated because they are necessary for accelerated.
But they also said the Vernon School District
True.
withdrew immediately from the Act 46 study committee. But,
But the town is still involved in the vote
yeah,
based on the second part of that.
yeah.
And I think that's what we're waiting to get as an opinion.
It's necessary language.
You're just taking about something you made, you just said maybe think that,
Oh, sorry, Jenny.
is that if we only went with one motion, right? In other words, not a this happens and this happens, then everybody's necessary.
Right.
Right.
And that solves.
Yeah, yeah, that was one of the points that Guilford discussed, was that if our at-large representatives can only come from the necessary districts, and I would think we would want to include everybody in that population, then everybody would have to be necessary, which then in turn negates having that fallback option entirely.
Well, so shall we, all districts are necessary? Or do we want to wait?
Well, but don't we still have to wait because it is, I took what Vernon sent as we're out entirely. We don't want to have any part of it. So then how can any merger go forward if we say that they're necessary?
Because of the statute language.
And because for some reason they specifically said advisable, that to me that makes it unclear.
It was a clear decision.
Yeah.
And I think they recognize that. Sorry, I should speak louder.
Thank you.
So again, we're going to get clarification on that.
So we're
fairly
So
skipping this section.
indeed, because time is tight and we
Can I ask a
can.
quick question? If
Yeah.
all districts are necessary in a mud, how is that different from an
Yeah.
accelerated?
It wouldn't be a mud.
Okay, so that with the mud, so we wouldn't, okay, all
Right.
right, thank you, okay.
You'd just be putting this
Accelerate.
forward as an accelerator.
Right.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so top of page 5, we're not looking at that, that's the remainder of Article 1. Grade 2, Article 2, grades to operate.
So the change here is the Vernon thing, where it says language which may be considered. The last version had 10 years of grandfathering. This one, based on the study committee input, the last meeting of April 13th, requested that we put the current 7th through 12th grade students would be grandfathered while attending other schools under school choice. So it would be essentially their current 7th through 12th population when a merger occurred.
And have all boards gotten the chance to talk about that? Dummerston has talked about this?
No, we touched on it, but not, there was neither support or.
So thoughts on this based on, Ian, hold on a second. Anyone, Ian and Beth? Jill and then,
I would like to see the word currently enroll, because it's just one step clearer, and I think that's what I heard you guys all saying on the video last week.
Ian, your thoughts?
Well, two thoughts, which kind of cancel each other out. One, I was a little uncomfortable with the way the number suddenly changed on Vernon. It seemed like we extended them a generous offer and then kind of just pulled the rug out from under them without a lot of discussion. But since they are now kind of pulling out of this process, I guess I don't really care to fight that fight very much.
So, Ian, are you comfortable with 7 through 12 enrolled? Well, actually, let me not ask you that. Beth?
Yeah, so Guilford talked about this, and our feeling, we didn't have strong opinion either way, except if it swayed Vernon to join us or not. So we thought if one way or the other would convince them to be on our team, that we'd be okay with that. If wasn't gonna make a difference either way, then it didn't matter, but it would kind of be negated now because they're not here to answer that
You mean
question.
either the 7 to 12 or the 10 years?
Yeah, like if we went with 10 years, would they join us? Then I'm okay with 10 years. If they would join us with 7 to 12, then we could do it 7 to 12. But we felt like if it was a deal breaker, we'd go for it. If it's not, then.
Yeah.
But now we don't.
Richard and then David.
And I think Putney thought the 10 years was overly generous. It said 7 to 12 were students who were already enrolled. It made sense, even though there was some grumbling about that as well, but we couldn't lose.
Dave?
How did it get changed from 10 years to now the correct 7 to 12?
At the last meeting, we had to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we had actually quite a percent.
I want to watch.
yeah. I mean, I have notes written from that
No,
draft.
skip it. I'll watch the
Okay,
meeting.
okay, yeah.
Okay, so is everyone okay with this current language?
So changing currently enrolled, I'll add that.
Okay. You guys, Dummerston needs to talk about it? Jill?
I have a question, because I wasn't here at the last meeting, and I did watch the video. However, I don't remember Vernon saying anything, Walter. So do we have a feeling whether this is an important issue? Well, it costs us money as a merging consolidated group. So my question is, do we have an opinion from Vernon at all?
That night, he said he appreciated the fact that the report indicated 10 years. Then there was a lot of discussion about that being too lengthy. I don't think he responded to that.
No, there wasn't any response. And previously, he did say that he felt that we were very generous.
I remember hearing him say that too, but
That was 2 weeks.
What I wrote down from what he said was, it was a generous benefit, and he thanked us and said Vernon wants to maintain choice.
Period. That's what I got out of that, but
And I
That wasn't-
specifically wrote that down, you know, for a reason.
Well, and I gotta say, I watched the video too, I wasn't at that meeting, and I took it to mean that no matter what it was, if they were gonna lose choice in any way, shape, or form, it wouldn't matter. So the idea of, like Beth, you were saying, you know, if one way makes them want to come and be part of the group, they seemed like they didn't want to be part of the group either way if they were going to lose choice at all.
So then my question before we leave this is, I was doing this because I thought it made sense in an easier transition, but it does cost us money. Are we all comfortable with putting this in if Vernon doesn't want it? I mean, to me, what that says is Vernon doesn't want to be a part of this unless they have school choice, period. So why are we giving up money?
I recollect it didn't cost us money because the tuition reimbursement is lower and the schools are sending to, their costs are lower than within districts. So I think it was less money per student.
But we lose money with every student we don't have, right, Ron?
Yes.
Or Ron and Frank were fine.
Yeah. Do you want to quickly answer and then we'll go to Richard and then to Dave?
It could be argued either way. It does depend on the average now tuition rate and BUHS's enrollment. So yeah, I would say it's not a significant economic impact on the system.
Either way.
Either way.
Richard?
I think in our funding conversations, the thought was to ask students who are already enrolled in the school to move schools because this seemed unfair.
Yeah.
And that although it may cost us a little bit more, or more, depending on how you look at it, it seemed not in the best interest of the students to do it.
Yeah, I think it's respectful of the electorate to do this for them, especially since this has been suggested as an option from the AOE when we asked them when we asked for a response about our options with Vernon's options in this scenario. Ian, and then shall we move on?
I also think it's just important to note that when we're saying Vernon won't go for it, we're hearing from certain people in Vernon. The voters of Vernon could still choose to merge. So, we want to make sure we're treating them fairly in case they override what we're being told by their school leadership.
Well said. Yeah. Can we move on? Okay, guys. Collective bargaining agreements, everyone's good with that? Proposed new school construction, no schools are proposed to be constructed at this time. Everyone is good. Plan for first year of operations, everyone good?
What does that mean for Guilford and the transportation? They're the only ones with transportation, right? And that was an issue for Guilford at one point?
We read it as meaning that if we had that in effect during the first year of the merged operations, that we would retain that.
Yeah.
Is that good for Guilford? They're happy?
We're happy.
Article 6, there's A, B, and C, capital debt, operating fund surpluses and deficits, specified funds. Any? Yes, Ron?
So the specified funds, we're trying to get some language to make sure that we have capital plans included in kind of a specified account for each school. So we're still working on that.
We're good?
Is there an addendum we talked about having listed all the debts and surpluses?
Yes, we
Will
talked
go
about
with
that.
it. We've talked about it, but I haven't seen it attached, so I'm assuming we're still attaching, right?
Yes.
We have that document I passed out to the committee last meeting, and that identifies those debts and capitalized.
So we just attach it, so it's there.
Yep.
Real estate, property, and school operations. So real estate and property transfer, I hope I'm speaking loud enough, guys.
Yes, you are.
Raise your hand at me if I'm not. Real estate and property transfer will occur in accordance with Title 16, Section 723. Yeah.
Guilford was thinking, right now, it says that, oh, this might not be the right spot. I saw the 5%. Does this have to do with the transferring of students?
No.
Okay. Hold my comment.
So I'm going to share Putney. So Putney would like, in this is the right point, right, for this language, Frank, and this might be an issue, I believe this is an issue for Brattleboro, Solar perhaps. The Putney Central School District retains the right to transfer to the new unified district or to the town of Putney or a nonprofit of their choice to preserve the property, and the property would be the school forest. And so the Putney would, because we do not want him burning down our house.
I was gonna log in flat for a while.
Right. I think pellets, I think is what Joe was thinking. So if that language is okay, we're gonna put that in. That means that we don't need to rush and panic and we'll make sensible choices.
So there might be a list of those types of things?
Right, so this is now the time. I'm assuming your boards have discussed this to some extent perhaps. Jill, I know there's a solar.
We have a solar array.
No,
Well,
solar array, you don't own
But we own the rights to purchase it or something.
that. Yeah.
Oh, Jill, bummer.
No, we have a contract, so after 7 years, we can purchase it.
So that contract would be still honored, but you don't own it today, so.
No,
Right.
just the credits.
So wouldn't that go into here though, that Brattleboro can have that option to purchase, so we can give it to the town or something? that would-
But all contracts that are in existence would be honored in this new entity. The contracts,
Okay.
no.
So we don't
contracts-
need to worry
Okay.
specifically.
And any other concerns?
Maybe if we take down the Putney Forest, we could put up another solar array.
Ooh, I like it.
For drill for oil.
Oh, I know.
Fracking for some shale.
Okay, so anything else about this article, guys? Yeah, no?
Alice, there has been a little bit of concern about fields in Dummerston, and
Yeah.
because a lot of the fields are used more for recreation purposes, but we have not gotten a chance to discuss that as a board.
So,
And it's
but
been
they're
on our
owned by the
agenda.
school?
They're owned by the school,
So-
yeah.
That's covered in the facility thing that we just got to touch on last night, so we can talk more about that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this might be a big one, but hopefully not too big. Article 8, Board of Directors composition. So we have the two still listed here. I thought we were leaning towards the 8. Is that correct?
So Alice, the Brattleboro town reps had a lot to say
Yes.
on this particular section. And as in my great stew analogy, I consider this kind of the salt and pepper of bringing back their comments. So I promised them we would. One was that they thought 8, we understand that 8 would mean if it's a tie, it doesn't go through. But they felt that there was potential there with 8 to continually be impacted in a tie and never being able to really move forward. So the overwhelming feeling of people in that room was 9 is better. And then the other concern was the representation of Brattleboro coming back to the Leadership Council and just having 2. Is there anything else I'm forgetting, Mark, Dave?
I think the specific thing about the 8 is if there was some significant issue that came along that really hadn't been decided, that had a really significant impact one way or the other, kind of like the Supreme Court right now, if there were no, if the decision couldn't be made, then there could be significant cost or loss of opportunity. And that having a majority really mattered.
Yes.
Well, just my thought as we're sitting here thinking about this, because I felt that all along about the tie thing, but is if, and it's a big if, but if Vernon is truly out, then that would bring us in this model down to 7. Do you think those of you that were at that Brattleboro meeting feel like the folks in Brattleboro would feel okay about that?
Yes.
If we're at 7 because we're now at an odd number? Even though it's not the 9 that they were thinking they
It wasn't
wanted.
9, it was odd.
Odd. So if we're at 7.
But I think for this, but I think for this report, though, we have to take Vernon into account because it's, you can't take them out if we're doing the accelerated, because they're necessary.
Okay.
Frank,
But the
do you
7 makes sense if you.
Do you have anything to say about this?
Well, I think as Sarah's actually saying, that under what it's most likely, it sounds like, based on the way we started the meeting, with Vernon being necessary, then the issue around at large is somewhat resolved there, in that there was an issue about can the at large be associated with a necessary district, so that is sort of a resolved issue there. As far as the even number, I think the only other thing that's been discussed is that the tie vote is a default to a no, and so you still have a definitive position as a board on an issue. It's not like it's a a tabled item. It is a definitive position on the board.
Right. Kim, did I interrupt you?
No.
Sorry.
No.
I think I did. Should we just, I think it's worth talking about whether we would want to consider 3 at large. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Actually, and it's directly relevant. With the, it was the hybrid model, right? Is what we have here. Could we actually tie these directors, rather than to the town, could we tie them directly to a school? In which case you'd have one director from each of the towns that has to come from that community, tied to the town schools. You'd elect a director for Oak Grove, for Green Street, and for Academy, and an at-large director for BUHS and for BAMS. That would give you a 9-member board, and it would change that image of Brattleboro controlling everything, because rather than, okay, these are your Brattleboro reps, it would be one school, one vote.
You can't have people running for a particular school. It's got to be from the town. But once they're elected, you as BUHS board does, kind of assign them to, okay, so you're the BUHS rep, you're the BAMS rep. But they can't be elected for that.
You can't elect.
The way the population, there had to be according to population.
Well, that would keep the proportionality, because we'd have 3 from Brattleboro to the 3 Brattleboro schools.
Beth and then Richard.
No, I think that makes sense. Either would elected as 3 from Brattleboro, 1 from the outlying towns, and then assign those 3 to a school. It kind of changes your image a little bit for whatever reason.
And it also affects a lot of the complaints we had about the leadership councils having no teeth. If we put your leadership council first, and the board is the representative of the leadership councils, then that changes that whole mentality. That makes you're that school's rep to the board.
Can you talk through that for me? So what would that look like in terms of language?
In terms of language, how
Are
it...
you doubting this is possible? Ron?
No, I'm just saying, actually, when we get to the leadership council, Article 12,
You like it?
you know, we have on the page 10 of that, each leadership council elected chair designate one representative to serve on the Brattleboro Union High School Board. In addition, BAMs and also the Whitney Regional Career Center. So I think we've already covered that.
We have, but we kind of cover it the other way. We cover it backwards.
Yeah.
If we put that first
Yeah.
and have, basically, you could even, change the titles so that once you're appointed, you are the Green Street director.
So how does the election work?
Well, from what Ron is saying, we'd still have to just elect 3 members and appoint them to a board.
Kim?
But now, I know we have 2 different options here. And if you're talking about 3 Brattleboro members, if you're looking at where we have 8 board members, there are only 2 Brattleboro reps.
Well, we'd have to go to 9.
So we can make that 9.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm assuming we're looking at the 8 right now, right? Mark?
You said we can't elect the Brattleboro representatives for specific schools. But if we're going to elect these individuals, why don't we give them the option to get together in a huddle, more or less among the 3 of them, decide what schools they want to take? And that language ought to be really short. And that's not complicated.
I think that's essentially what we're talking about, with electing and
That
appointing.
can be done. But I do like that model, and it sort of gives back a sense of community.
Yeah, I do.
The community rep to the representation.
Yeah. Joe?
One thought is that we have 4 schools. We have EES, Oak Grove, Green, and Brattleboro. Just to point that out, I don't ever want us to lose EES awareness. However, EES serves Wyndham County. It actually serves people from outside of our own current supervisory union up in Bellows Falls. So we have 2 schools up there, 2 actual physical locations up there. So that one could more easily maybe come from an at-large position too. It wouldn't necessarily have to be Brattleboro.
So are we still looking at 8, or are we considering 9?
9.
So,
9 for the hybrid.
Yes.
right, so where, is that 3 at large?
2 at large, 3 Brattleboro.
Well,
I would do the
With the understanding that the 3 Brattleboro are each specific.
We'll then be.
They will then choose among themselves which school
Which
they
school.
will choose to represent.
Right.
So let's be clear about this. I put
Yeah.
it both ways. 3 at large and 2 Brattleboro, or 3 Brattleboro and 2 at large?
The 3,
I thought we were talking about 3 Brattleboro and keeping the same 2 at large.
And I think the Brattleboro reps would be much more in tune with that.
and
It
because
feels right with 3 towns.
the high school and middle school serve the entire community, well, except for a couple of schools, but so those would make sense for the at-large reps.
so I think this is really important, right?
I just- So that puts us potentially in the strictly proportional structure.
Yeah.
You know, if the 2 at-large members come from Brattleboro, then we have the five Brattleboro folks, and then the one of all the little
We don't have the option or the ability to have them not be from Brattleboro.
So, but,
Which one is it?
yeah, I think I would be leaning towards having 3 at large to Brattleboro. Knowing that a good chunk of those at large will most likely come from Brattleboro.
Right.
But then that gets back to the issue that the Brattleboro reps were having about feeling related. I mean, it'd be the same sort of thing if suddenly a Brattleboro person is gonna go serve as the Putney rep.
Yeah.
We don't know much about the community in Putney, well, some, but.
But I was contention that the 2 at-large represent the 2 schools, or the 1 school with the 2 parts, where we're sitting right now, gives the community, the larger community, the county community, makes sense of representation. So the at-large, even if they are both elected from Brattleboro or Putney or other, it's understood that they will represent the AMs or the high school. Much as the three from Brattleboro will eventually represent one of the three schools. It makes sense. All we have to do is get over the language of this.
So is that 3 Brattleboro and 2 at large?
Yes. 3 Brattleboro and 2 at large would, with the understanding they would, 1 for the BAMs, 1 for the high school.
Well, it would be, what would have to, the 2 at-large people would have to do high school, BAMS, the Career Center, and now I'm hearing EES.
Well, EES historically has had a policy council that is made up of members from the parents who are sending their kids to EES and a representative of the Brattleboro School Board. Doesn't necessarily have to be.
So you're describing a leadership council?
Well,
And a community representative.
And community representatives, parent representatives, and a more or less courtesy member from the Brattleboro School Board.
Well, it's not courtesy, I mean,
Well,
it's actually required by
Yeah,
federal law.
it's federal law.
Right, so,
with the EES,
but
so-
Mark just described as a leadership council.
Right, but.
So we have, we're gonna, one of these 9, should be one of these 9 board members is going to have to be responsible for that as well. So let me, to finish my thought is that if there's the high school, BAMS, the Career Center, and EES, the 2 at-large members each took 2 of those 2 things that are over-encompassing more than just one town, then that could be a way to break that up. So understanding the 2 at-large members, one's gonna have to take the high school and maybe the Career Center, and one takes the BAMS and EES or something like that, as a way of breaking it up. And then that way, people are clear about what they're doing. Just my thought.
I like that thought.
I'm thinking of Dummerston and, I like the 3 at large better than with the 2 Brattleboro. I think that doing it the other way with the 3 Brattleboro and the 2 at large, we're just reverting back to what we originally started with, and there were concerns there about that from the smaller towns, and I think Dummerston would have that issue.
I believe Putney would have that issue too, even though I totally appreciate the logic.
And the other thing too,
To
in terms
do
of
the other.
workload, we all do serve on different committees. There's the SU Finance Committee. There's, you're gonna end up doing multiple things, regardless. And I think when you take on this particular responsibility, you should be not expected to be paid well at all, and then just to have a lot of meetings to go to. I mean, you're not gonna just show up and.
Yeah, I think the only concern was if you were a working adult, as we all are, trying to figure out how to manipulate these meetings, all the time that you need for a board. And obviously, you're gonna have to be flexible within your work schedule. And that's what we're trying to figure out, is how can you meet the needs if you really want to do this position. And you want it to be fair, when you're looking at, financial end of it. So and we know that we do a lot for donations, we donate our time a lot.
Can we keep the stipend to, I think we all have some things to say about that. Can we stay on the number issue right now?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I think that what Putney would object to in the first model, where it was 5 and then 1, 1, 1, 1, that would be a concern. Looking back to where we were with the at-large members, I think, yes, the 2, I think, is attractive. But I think if we had offered up at the beginning 3, I think people would have said, oh, that's a good idea. It's the fact that we're moving back towards that. I think, again, in comparison with the 5 coming from Brattleboro, the 3 with the 2 at large still, I think, would be acceptable. I think if we bring it down.
So, so I think I would be comfortable with the 3 if we have a board meeting on Thursday night. So if the rest of our board were comfortable. I will say that while I like 2 from Brattleboro better, I've recognized since the beginning that the 3 elementary schools ideally would have 3 reps, and it makes total sense to me. Jill and then Ricky.
So that's my concern, is how to go back to a Brattleboro population and say, so we're gonna have 2 for sure. How do we split that up and make sure that they're still?
It's,
I think I might.
sorry.
I'm
You
just
got an
gonna,
idea?
if I can, well,
Yeah.
just to go completely outside the box here a little bit beyond what we've done. I was figuring out like the 1 school, 1 rep kind of idea. If we break it up, the high school, the middle school, the career center, EES, and all the towns and the 3 from Brattleboro, that's 11 schools that need representation. That gives us an odd number. If we did 1 from each one of the 4 smaller towns, 3 from Brattleboro, and then 4 at large. 1 that would cover the high school, 1 that would cover the career center, 1 that would cover BAMS, and 1 would cover EES. And those were and 4 at-large members. Yes, it brings us to an 11-member board, which I've got into this thinking we don't want a huge board. But if it's 11 members, it spreads out the workload a little bit, gives each school 1 representative that's theirs, and brings us to an 11-member board, which then keeps us at an odd number.
Ron and then Amy.
I think the concern would be the potential for 7 members from Brattleboro.
Yes.
I don't think there's any way we're gonna get around that. The at-large members could always be from Brattleboro.
Indeed, yeah.
But when you add that many more, then it's a significant number in relation to the schools.
Okay, it was just an idea.
Can I suggest that Dummerston and Putney will have meetings before, Dummerston really does need to meet very soon. You guys are seem comfortable. When do you guys next meet?
Monday.
Okay, well, that's great. I think Brattleboro seems comfortable. So what I'm going to suggest is that we all look at with these smaller boards, Brattleboro 3, and then 2 at large. Since it's and then we'll really hear from the smaller folks. Yeah? It's work.
And I think it's important to really note the 1 school, 1 vote, that this person, it's not really, although it will be elected as 3 from Brattleboro, they'll really be focused on their school. It's 1 school, 1
So,
vote.
okay, so do we want to put that language in the first paragraph of this? Can you write that right now? What would that be? Or someone chime in, wordsmith first.
It will be, yeah, well, just instead of this list, we list out the schools. 1 from Green Street, 1 from,
But you can't vote for the school.
we can't vote for them that way, but we can list them that way on our list.
1 would be
And
represented.
then, when we're talking about the voting, it would be the 3 Brattleboro schools will be voted on by, must come from Brattleboro, will vote on by the people of Brattleboro, and then assigned to their respective school.
I think one of the things he said too in the wordsmithing before that was important was to be able to say clearly that it was assigned to each of the schools. So if there was something in the wording about there that the Guilford representative would be for the leadership council for Guilford and also for the unified board, and that all the way down for each one of the towns. And then the Brattleboro 3 would be for the 3 elementary schools. The 2 at-large would be for EES, BAMS, Career Center, and
Middle
BUHS.
school.
Can I ask a question nobody wants to think about?
What's that?
What happens if one of the schools closes? Do we have to amend this thing, or does it stay the same? Like if we went from 3 elementary schools to 2 in Brattleboro?
Well, then, I know that too, and I answered my own question by you'd be representing the community. Because you would still have, for example, Dummerston kids going to the schools. And that's where I think, the thing that concerns, I get the notion of assigning schools, but I don't like it in the Articles of Agreement because I feel like it's a little restrictive. And it doesn't necessarily promote the larger sense of community that we're trying to create here.
Well, so why don't we take that conversation to the smaller boards? Okay.
So when do we need to have that answered back? How does that work in the timeline?
Well, we're meeting next week. So all of the smaller boards at least will have met by then. And when we get the sense, yeah,
I don't know if they will.
Dummerston will need to.
Yeah, I will.
We will.
Yeah, you'll have to. And can we assume that that Brattleboro reps and your board would be comfortable with?
We meet Ken for the next
Okay,
meeting.
so great. Okay, can we move on to Article 10? Anything on this? This is vote on articles and new board. Okay? Do you have anything, Amy or Christina? Or is this for next?
Article 10?
We didn't actually go through article by article, we went through Frank's PowerPoint. So we
Okay.
did not, we did the whole articles with the school board.
You need to go through the
Right.
report with your school board.
I had already made that request of the chair, so
Okay.
hopefully.
So before the next meeting, because that's, legally, we all need to do that as part of the process. So Article 11, local input on policy and budget development. This is, we talked about this last time, we're keeping this last sentence, I believe, but, okay. Anything else on this? So we
So
just
do
need to
wanna
edit
get-
that.
Do we want to get rid of the language to be considered?
Yes.
Just leave the-
Article 12, yeah.
That still makes me a little nervous, because I can see putting that in this document being used to cause contention. That we're saying, well, we're not going to say, well, you have to do it at each point on a rotating basis, but then I can see people saying, well, it says in the articles that we have to rotate, but you went to them twice and haven't come here, and I can just foresee problems being caused by having
I
that
think
here.
we've done so well with this committee here as far as rotating, but I think that it's, to me, I feel confident that we will rotate and take care of each other.
And I think the history of the SU meetings being rotated.
Yeah, that works. That's worked very nicely.
And also, Brattleboro does that already. We have 4 places, we go to 4 different schools all the time. It doesn't bother us at all. Except that I will admit, sometimes I forget where I'm going, like I have for here too, but that's just my own thing.
One night, I think.
Okay, so right now it's staying in again. Okay. Article 12, local advocate, okay, so this is a big one. Do we want to talk about this, or do we want to, well, let's go ahead and dig into it. We're going to run a little late potentially tonight. Or maybe not. Oh, okay. Thoughts about this? Christina? Sorry, I thought you were.
I I'd like to see, based on our conversation with the AOE on Monday, just a separate bullet item at the end of the bullet items on page 10 that provides budgetary input to unified board member or,
I can't hear you, Amy. Where are you at?
on page 10, at the end of the bulleted items, because of the comments from the AOE on Monday about, in response to the concerns about local governance and local input, budgetary input, not having that school-based town meeting anymore. To put language in here, a bulleted item that specifically says, the leadership council will provide input to their district member.
So second to last paragraph? Or-
You
right.
said
the bullet
add a
item.
bullet on.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So provide
Yeah.
input on budget development to unified board?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Did you just write that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Dave.
That was one of the things that came up in our public meeting. Some of the town reps felt like they come to the information meetings because they have to go to the budget and they're intimately involved in developing it. And they get 2 presentations, one at the public meeting and one at town meeting. And so I'm glad to see that being added. One of the things that the legislature did in considering the siting of energy project bills is towns wanted to have a lot more say in those decisions. And what they did was came up with the term of deference, so that the town's view would be given deference in the decision, which means kind of go along with what they present. And I think that's That's what I was hearing, those representatives, they want to have a lot more than just some input or a presentation that they talk about and make some comments about, but that really has no, there's just no power or no control.
This is from your town reps?
Yeah, I know that the town reps were concerned about the budget being presented like the high school. I know that we're going back to the last article, but they were very concerned that they don't have a voice in budgetary approval, as I know all of the smaller towns have that issue,
Well,
that concern as well.
They would have a voice, but that it's,
But
I
they
mean,
don't
it's the
have a
same
vote.
thing that was raised by Dummerston residents a long time ago on how the BUHS budget is not well attended.
They have the same concerns.
I mean, it's the same concern.
Everybody does.
It's not anything new, but I don't know if it's right on this section so much for leadership council as, I don't know if we have a section actually, how the budget actually gets approved. That's really the, where, is it going to be a meeting where people have to go to it? You know, is there a time that people have to have a presentation? And I represented that I thought we said in here that everybody from the unified board would go back to your leadership council and actually present. And probably the unified board would go as well, just like we do at the town information night. But you wouldn't get a chance to vote on that budget at that point.
And that was the concern, that there's no power to vote.
Right.
The deference sort of implies that there would be.
So,
Frank, yeah.
a comment on that is that the way in which a union vote takes place, the process is prescribed in statute. So it's something you probably don't want to put into your articles. The only article that would be germane is if you want to change the date. The default is the March town meeting. And for a union, you have the option of setting a different annual meeting date. It's not typical to put that in the Articles of Agreement, but you could. But the process of the vote is in the statutes in terms of the warning process, the engagement of the board, and then the electric.
So it's similar to when the vote, if the vote takes place in the accelerated merger, the board has to be elected at the same time because that's the way the statute is. So if a supervisory district wanted to give that power to local, or at least the deference to local boards, the statute does allow.
That's right. It's a new union entity that has a governing board and is subject to the law around warning and the discretion of the electorate to either pass or not pass the budget.
So how does the budget get voted on?
Just like in terms of a regional system, just like the Leland or the Leland Gray and or the BUHS, any of our union school votes where it's a regional system, and therefore it's a collective meeting. Typically, they set a date outside of town meetings, so it doesn't conflict with the municipal business. But it's no different than any individual district meeting where board approves a budget, board warns the budget. It has to be within the 30 to 40 day period before the vote of the electorate. And the default is town meeting, but the new union board can select a date as an alternative. The other unusual thing that we have in Brattleboro is we still have the traditional town meeting format for the Union High School. We may be the only one in the state that is doing that. So that's another consideration that the board can do, whether they warn the provision for Australian ballot format as opposed to the current format.
Right. Yeah.
What we talked about in Guilford is envisioning, right now we have a pre-town meeting and then a town meeting. And we were thinking that we would use pre-town meeting to discuss the budget with our town any concerns, and it would be kind of an interactive meeting that then the representative to the district board could go back and share those results or those opinions on, and then we would be voting on the actual budget via a ballot at town meeting, is how we envisioned it. Is that right? Or
That is
possible?
how-
So would we have to, like, yeah, to Jill's point, how do we decide which way we're gonna do it? Is that gonna be written into here?
It doesn't have to be written in, it can be decided by the new board.
I
but-
think it behooves us to write it in because Guilford's asked and Brattleboro's asked, Dummerston folks have asked.
So can we please write some language about that right now?
Beth, your impression from Guilford was that you would rather have it at town meeting.
Yeah, we would rather hold our pre-town meeting to have our open dialogue and then vote on it, and this is just our board's discussion, and then vote on it via ballot at town meeting.
And I believe the Brattleboro people that were at our forum kind of felt that way as well, except there was some concern
About Australian ballots.
about getting it approved being really, really hard because every single town would have to. But that's part of the democratic process.
Yes. So can we write some language for Amy to record?
The town, the unified board will go to, is it the leadership council? Will go to each town's information night and present information on the budget. The budget on the vote on the budget will occur during town meetings by Australian ballot.
The only problem with,
Well, then for us, it doesn't go at town meeting, it occurs by Australian ballot on town meeting day in the case of Brattleboro.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think you probably should get guidance if we're going to change the format that we're using now from legal counsel, but a couple of things. One thing that we heard from the Act 46 group on Monday morning was a typical strategy that other supervisory unions that have gone through the merger process have employed, is that just like your elected legislative representative typically is invited to attend town meeting, speak about the issues, receive input from the public, take that back to policy development and so on. They suggest to do the same thing for the unified board. So it's the representative from the unified board for that town attends town meeting, essentially is engaged around the local issues and has a report for the town to take back to the board in the deliberative process of budget development and so on. But then there would be the traditional warning and vote at a same day at a annual meeting of the new entity. So that's a traditional process that I think we could pull right out of one of the districts that have merged as approved state board language.
David?
So it would be like the high school, the towns would be having their town meetings, but the supervisory district would have a district meeting similar to what the high school does, the information would be presented and what would happen there. So it wouldn't be in ballot boxes all around in the circle.
It could be, if it's Australian ballot, it would be at the town offices, yes. It would be each town office, the same day.
Overall, I've never really cared for Australian ballot, but in this situation where after attending this past budget here at the high school and only seeing like 100 people here, I feel that this gives the greater community a sense of opportunity and the voice to be heard when it comes down to, at the end of the night, as to what people are feeling. I just feel it's a greater opportunity for our community to either support it or deny it, and if they deny it, unfortunately, we go back to the table and recreate. But I really think that we need to put it in for Australian ballot and have it on our prospective town meeting day that we typically have it.
Amy?
So I guess, and I'm not basing this on input from the board, Dummerston's board, because we haven't touched on this, but based on what I know of Dummerston, I think that folks would be really disappointed to not be able to speak to specific items in the budget and offer amendments to a budget from the floor, like we're able to do now in Dummerston and like we're able to do now in the high school.
Do you think they come? I mean,
Yeah,
I just worry about the representation at the BAM's budget meeting. People say they like to do that, but then they don't ever go to the meeting.
Personally, I feel like that's a more democratic process than just saying yay or nay. You know, you actually engage in dialogue.
I get it, and I appreciate that, but after almost, 20 years of attending meetings and seeing how few people come to meetings.
Well, and the dialogue I would see happening at that pre-town meeting or the town information night or.
But the interesting part of what Amy's saying, I'm trying to figure out how we can set the timing so all of that can happen. Because what's interesting about what Amy's pointing out is that right now, we can't actually, if you've got a budget all set, you take it to people and explain it, and then it goes to a vote. So there's no time really for public to say, hey, wait a minute, we need, this is a good idea, people listen up, we need to do, the skating rink needs to become an indoor lacrosse field. This is a good idea, by the way, very serious about that. So that needs to throw in $100,000 into the budget. There's no chance to say that.
Right.
Is the way we're laying it out. Can we lay it out so that the town meeting goes earlier? And then the final budget discussion takes in kind of the salt and pepper, like what we're doing with this. Of, you know, the large work is done. It goes out to the towns to see if there's anything of real concern. And then the board presents an actual budget and it goes out for the vote.
So
Is there a way to do that?
The legal provision for that, of course, is the public information meetings that are set up during the budget deliberation process. You know, and we know we all struggle as boards to get good attendance at those. But that is the legal process that provides for public input to actually establish a budget assumption and/or make a change. But it's unrealistic after March to have public input and then enough time to revise a budget, re-warn it, and then vote because you know your employment folks are looking for an assignment for the next year. If they don't get one, they're going to have to go look for another job, and it's very difficult to staff an organization when you get that close to the end of a fiscal year.
So the town meeting information would have to be back in January?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
But it would be
that's how
possible, so it would just be kicked back.
And that's as it is now. As you know, we have those public information meetings in December and January for that purpose, to say, here's our draft proposal, we're about to warn it. Do you have any concerns? And if not, then that is the document that goes to town meeting.
Any thoughts of how we can make a decision here? Yeah.
Well, the reason for not doing Australian ballot is because people like to be able to propose amendments and such from the floor. Has an amendment proposed from the floor at the high school ever actually passed?
Only back 15 years ago when something was like $200,000 pulled out.
Yeah. So not
In the
very
smaller
often.
districts, it's more likely to add money for a stipend for the board.
But we are now talking about a budget that is more akin to the way the high school budget works, where it's a large meeting with everyone together. The motions from the floor really probably aren't going to happen, or at least they're not going to
And
pass.
quite frankly, that's not a good way to
Build a budget.
develop a final budget.
But that's not exactly what we're talking about, right? I mean, I think what Amy was proposing or bringing up and what I was thinking along is that it would be in the January
Yeah.
timeframe that you would have that sort of an information night and people would come and they could discuss the budget at that point and propose their amendments, and then it would go back through the normal
Yeah.
process.
And in that process, the leadership councils would be taking that input, sharing it with the unified board, and that's the budget development.
And then we do Australian ballot for the actual budget?
Australian ballot, like we do the regular vote in February for BUHS. So this unified system have a February vote, your representative goes to town meeting, and there's that feedback. And then the new fiscal year starts in July, and that feedback should go right into the planning process that starts for the successor year that fall. You're right into the planning process immediately. But so there's the town-wide interface at town meeting, but then there's, as Ron just said, of course, the real nitty-gritty interface with the Leadership Council. January, it's going to start September, October, right into January.
So do we have any work now?
So if we're comfortable with that, what we're talking about is the default in the statute, and you don't really need word. You just accept the statute. But if you want to put a date in, that's really the only germane piece of the article that you have some discretion over. If you want to put in the third Tuesday in February, then that's really your discretion.
And what this does, though, is it requires us then to change the language that we have under leadership councils to something more robust than just consult, right? Because the leadership council is then dialoguing with the community on what that budget should be, and taking direct feedback back to the school board itself.
Yeah.
It's more than consulting. It's a
Yeah.
more robust.
It could be. Typically when you think of this being a 20-year, maybe a 50-year document, the more prescriptive you are, the more difficult it is to adapt to in the future that you're not clear. So that's the benefit of being more general.
More general.
So you have in here, provide recommendations to the district board for capital investments, including building, ground, project, technology, library resources. And then we've added, provide input on budget development to the unified board.
Would you then also add present proposed budget to the town on pre-town meeting day in January? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the one that's, you have represent the school in town meeting, you could,
Town meeting / pre-town meeting? I mean,
yeah,
could you
you
add,
could fill in more on that.
Yeah.
Just add also pre-town meeting to that line.
I would do it as a separate bullet to specifically present proposed budget to town at designated pre-town meeting
Information session.
or information session, which will be scheduled enough in advance to allow for further budget development based on feedback. Somebody wrote that down.
What she said?
Yeah, what she said.
So you'll give me that?
I can't say it again.
Try to say it again so
We'll watch
it's
it on
done.
YouTube.
No, we need to get this in.
present this is what I got. Present proposed budget to town at designated pre-town meeting, and that's
Or information night, which will be scheduled enough in advance to allow for further budget development based on public input. A little different, but about the same.
How about, can I make I think, I might have. So present proposed budget to town at designated pre-town meeting or information night, which will be held prior. I lost it, I'm sorry.
I think it would be held with enough prior time to allow for.
Yeah, will be held in advance, enough in advance to allow for.
Scheduled enough in advance to allow further budget development based on public input. Yeah, sorry, no, I got it. So, present proposed budget to town at designated pre-town or information meeting, scheduled enough in advance to allow further budget development based on public input.
Yep.
Schedule enough in advance to,
Allow further budget development based on public input.
okay,
To town,
yeah,
Where?
that would be each town.
okay.
So say it.
No, I'm thinking that, I'm just concerned about the timing and of this actually, the practical nature of these. I'm concerned about.
About being able to do that.
Within a reasonable amount of time. Oh, sorry, the practicality of that. Being able to do that within a reasonable amount of time and to generate a budget that gets approved.
How about we say present draft budget, as opposed to, the proposed budget implies that it's a completed budget.
That's,
If we say a draft budget, it's at some point.
that's better because there's more time, right? Does that work? That's better? Okay, so we will, so everyone needs to talk about that with their boards, obviously. We will talk about that Thursday night. So Tom Ehrenberg wrote some suggestions. Does anyone want to, everyone's looked at those now if they wanted to. Does anyone want to consider grabbing any of those suggestions and putting them in here, or is everyone pretty comfortable with where we're at right now? And then we'll move on to the next article.
I was confused because I wasn't here, and the email I got forwarded then just had everything all together, so I couldn't tell what was existing and what was new. So can someone help me with that? So we know what we're looking at?
I can.
Thank you.
Why don't you chime in? Is it okay?
So on the very last page of what I sent you is what was existing.
We go off of this?
Oh, I'm sorry. So,
Because it's in here, right? What town stuff? No.
I don't know.
But okay, so I'll pull up that other thing. Yes, go town.
So what I wrote was proposed to replace essentially, not to replace, I'm sorry, to add to the bullets that you already have for the responsibilities of the leadership council. They are designed to give the leadership council's decision-making capacity rather than advisory capacity on the important areas of school governance, including budget, as well as hiring and evaluating and firing staff and building maintenance and so on. That is many of the responsibilities that local school boards currently have. I recognize that there is a tension between centralizing those powers in the super board and in the central office and keeping those powers in local schools. I think that's a healthy tension, and I think there's, Ron, when you say that's not a real good way to make a budget, I get that, but I also think if what you want is community involvement in your schools, then it is a good way to make a budget. So there's always going to be that tension.
So specifically, you were looking for, I think, did we just talk about the budget part?
We talked about the budget section, and what you just adopted was something of a hybrid of what you already had and what I had proposed. There are what Alice is asking is there are other aspects of the proposal you have in front of you, and I don't know whether you're interested in doing anything with those or not. Do you need a copy? Would you like a hard copy?
Always prepared over here. So, but I think there's some parts of the budget that we can't go into a whole lot more because it's not legal. I thought, but maybe I'm confused, Frank, on what he's saying here.
The legal restriction is on what you present at town meeting. Not at town meeting, I'm sorry, for approval from all of the towns. The process of creating the budget is not restricted by the Act. You can define your own way to create the budget.
I don't think I have.
When Ron responded to this, one of the things that he pointed out is that a lot of these things are already being done in the district. And I think that's true, but I think you have to be aware that at the moment that you consolidate, they will not be done because local school boards cease to exist. So all of the interplay that local school boards now have with their townspeople and with their schools stops and is replaced by this super board. So, for example, in our town, in
The
Putney,
leadership council though too, is acting like the school board is now.
the way you have it written, no. The way you have it written, the leadership council is advisory. Everything the leadership council does is essentially advisory. It does not have decision-making capacity except for relatively minor pieces. I'll give you an example. Right now, in Putney, the school board hires the principal. The principal is an employee of a legal entity, which is our school board, as are the teachers. That ceases when you adopt a merged district. That's an example.
So I guess the difference then, for what I'm reading and what I was understanding, I hadn't thought about it in this way, that you're so clear on ceases, because, I mean, for example, right now Brattleboro approves the hiring of teachers, right? But we, to my recollection, never said to a principal who's doing the actual hiring process, bad hire, no way. I mean, it's there as a formality, so I guess I had made the assumption that the leadership council would still be playing those roles and the unified board would be doing largely that same type of thing. But your concern is to actually put it in writing so that that has to be in there? Is that?
My concern is that as much as possible, and presumably when you have good cooperation between your principal and your staff and your board, yes, it's frequently not an issue. But occasions do arise, and the question is I'll give you an example. Ron has been very, very effective at recruiting staff and quality, good staff. It may be that a successor 10 years down the road, as Frank says, you're not writing this for Ron. So it may be that a successor might present you a candidate who you don't like very much for a principalship. And you may say, that's not who we want to hire, or we want to get rid of him. That process now, the power to make those decisions is local. That changes upon consolidation because there is no local school board.
I'm going to ask Ron to respond.
I'll say again, though, this whole section of hiring, personnel hiring, staff review, evaluation, firing, it can't change because it's in statute. The current practice would be the same. I have had situations where I have hired principals, and after input from staff and my own observations, gone through a process to remove that principal. That won't change.
That won't change if it's you doing it.
No, that's not the case. That will remain the same with anybody in my position that has a responsibility of, the screening process, the evaluation process, the support and supervision, and the evaluation in terms of judgment to say it's not working. Anybody in my position is going to get that feedback from the local school-based council, the representative from that town on the board, We do 360 feedback surveys for staff, so none of that will change. In fact, that's I think will be strengthened. So that whole section on current practices in your area, I don't see it changing. And
Then why not say it? Why not go ahead and say it and make it clear that local schools, that the leadership councils in local schools have that authority should they choose to exercise it?
well, I thought we had some in that bullet, like serve on hiring committees, staff and faculty. I think you have to be careful in those things. Because in current practice right now, based on statute, the school board does not evaluate the principal. It's the superintendent that evaluates, and I share that evaluation material with the school board.
But we give input.
That's right. Right.
It's because it's 360.
Right, so I think that the word evaluation is, as a verb, is too specific. But we could address Tom's concerns perhaps by saying that we're still a part of the evaluation process. Similarly as to serve on the hiring committees, not saying hiring, but serve on. So we could put something in there of how did I just say it? Word, assist with the evaluations or participate in the evaluating.
Actively participate,
I was just saying, why don't we just indicate that the superintendent will share evaluations of principals with leadership councils? Since right now it's legislated that you do it to the board, but not to the council to get a comment.
I like that.
What do you think, Ron? Did you have a comment?
Yes, Reed Miller, Dummerston. Unless I am mistaken, when I was on the board in Dummerston, we actively hired the principal. And I think that's what Tom's referring to. We're not referring to evaluating and adjusting. We're talking about the straight up interviewing, hiring.
Well,
That's
different.
Yep.
Serve on the hiring committees would be there.
The statute changed in terms of the actual process for hiring.
When did it change, Ron?
2012.
2012.
Isn't it true, though, that we still, that you recommend principles to us, but we make a decision on that?
Yeah, we go through that process by statute. We don't need to, but I think it's important that we do. And I don't see that we would be changing that.
Ian?
At the, on the high school board, we do a lot of work in committees, which is in a way similar, different structure, but we have the committee that does a lot of work. I don't think the board has ever not gone with the recommendation of the committee for the simple reason that the people on that committee are the experts. The rest of the board isn't going to want to duplicate the work they've done. It doesn't make sense. So I think largely this is a solution in search of a problem. The committee is not going to be overruling what the leadership councils are doing. It's not in their best interest. I'm quite happy with the
I have to tell you
language we
that
have.
observing the process, observing this process and observing the response to public input in, being asked to slow down, getting recommendations from the State Department of Ed, the commissioner, slow down, and having that essentially not be heeded at all does not inspire confidence. So I understand what you're saying, but what I'm witnessing is a very different process.
This process has nothing to do with the governance of a school. I'd encourage you to come to some of our BUHS meetings and see how that process does work.
Reed, one question or comment, and then we're going to keep going.
I would just hope that the Brattleboro members would appreciate that when you're talking about giving Dummerston, giving Guilford one vote, we had 100% before this happened, and now we're being offered 10% of the control of what we have. If you could appreciate that and the fact that have been historically in the trenches doing what we do, and so to come over here into this program, which is taking away from us. It's easy for you because you're already there. We're not. The other thing from a very simple sense is that I haven't heard about the solution, what this program builds. I haven't heard about how you're going to liaise from the super board to the buildings. That's going to increase overhead. You haven't even talked about it. It's easy to understand how you're going to take away $500 from this person, that person who's on a board, and those are small numbers. But when you start to have a super board and you have to disseminate that information to each individual site, that requires a whole nother level of management, which could potentially make things go up.
Can you actually, let's hold that for later, okay? Did you want to respond and then we need to keep moving?
That would be the leadership council. The leadership council is that liaison between the super board and the community, and your leadership council is 100% from your town. You have 100% of your school's leadership.
So can we move on to Article 13, please?
I want to respond.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Tom, I'm a little bit, whenever somebody says something like what you said, I usually put my head down and try not to say anything. I would like to speak to
Please
that.
do.
When people keep saying we're not listening, we're not heeding, gosh, I don't know. I spent time reading this. I didn't see all of it in the email, but I've spent time listening to this. I think, spent time with you right here trying to listen to it, and I think everyone else was also doing that too. I'm having a hard time not being personally offended by hearing people say that we're not listening and we're not heeding and you've been saying and watching the board like rush headlong into an accelerated merger. There's been a lot of careful consideration by people sitting up here into trying to listen to everything that you're saying and trying to take into account that, and then also researching things. So, sorry.
Well said.
I needed to say that for myself personally.
Absolutely.
That's
And I assumed it was taken for granted. I will say,
Don't think for a minute that the work that you have put in and the attention that you've paid goes unnoticed and is not tremendously appreciated. I know how much work that is. I also do know that other districts are taking a year and 2 years and 3 years to look at these issues because they're very complex.
And I agree with that, and I think every single person in this room agrees that it's very complex. At the same time, I hear from people, specifically from Guilford, saying, we see what we need to do and we can't do it. And we see where this will address it. So I'm torn with hearing from people saying, slow down, slow down, slow down, when I feel like I've been trying to address all of these things and trying to do it, and hearing at the same time there's a need for moving forward. And I'm trying to balance that. And I appreciate that your honesty in saying that you appreciate what we're doing. It just weighs on me heavily, and my husband would tell you that I spend far too much time complaining to him when I hear people completely saying that all the time, that we're not heeding the public, we're not listening. So I'm sorry, Alice.
It's okay.
point totally taken. Thank
So,
you.
Article 13, guys. What do we need to address this? Have we done that? Yes, go ahead.
So Guilford would like to see, we talk about a 5% transfer to go from one school to another, that allowable transfer limit. We'd like to see there to keep the 5% out quota, but to allow more than 5% in if it makes sense, and if it aligns with like the PICA study and allows our class sizes to be more effective without hiring additional staff. We didn't want to limit the amount of students that we could take in, but we do want to limit the students that you can take out.
Do we need numbers at all if we just say what makes sense for the school?
That's what we talked about, yeah.
Well, that's where we came up with the percentages, that it's part of a statewide policy as it is. That's where we got those percentages.
So
And I
it's
think
based
that last italicized print on the bottom of 10, the capacity of the school to receive students from other schools may include limits based on capacity of programs, class, grade, school buildings, or measurable adverse financial impact.
But go ahead.
Couldn't we just delete the sentence in between the two in order to address that concern, so that no participation should be subject to a loss or gain disparity of more than 5%? If if we delete that and keep the first sentence that addresses that,
Yes.
and then you have the final sentence that allows for considerations that would get a
Yep,
percent.
that would meet our request.
Is that okay, Ron?
I don't know, I mean, I can't really respond to it
I
right
know,
now. I mean,
yeah.
I want to think about the implications.
Okay.
You know, like, the high school choice has been in effect since 2002. And there's a big implication in terms of, like, to BUHS, where we accept 10 students per year.
Can't hear you, Ron.
BUHS accepts 10 students per year. It used to be much less, I think it was only 4. But we have 20 students, 30 students applying for it to come. And then the other smaller sending schools are concerned about the loss of students. So I'd want to think about the implications of changing this.
We were thinking that you wouldn't go over the 5% at any one school, but if we took a sample population from a bunch of schools, we could potentially gain more than 5, even though those other schools were not losing more than 5.
Mathematically, that would work in a smaller school, yeah.
Right.
And that last line allows you to have a decision based upon what numbers that you can have regardless of what the percentages are.
Yeah.
So, Ron, when you're talking about the high school only taking in 10, I mean, the high school has capacity and BAM has capacity for many more kids than what we have.
But the money doesn't follow the kids.
Right.
And so in any case, if you just open the floodgates, you would be happy to hire staff.
What if the money did follow the kids? If the money
It's not.
follows the kid,
It
it's
doesn't,
not.
this does not include tuition changing. That's the nice thing about this. It's allowing families that move to stay in the school that the kids are at. It doesn't have a financial burden other than, you know, if you go over the capacity, then it does have a financial bearing.
That's what that last sentence
Yeah,
addressed.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me kind of think
Okay.
about that.
And why don't we, when we take this to our boards, why don't we explain that discussion? So we have either side. Okay, shall we keep going?
I have a,
Yeah.
what you just said confused me about the tuition not following, but we're talking about schools all within
Yeah.
the district, right? So the tuition is one pool.
Yeah, I think the issue for a unified district here would be the loss of a school. That if more kids left a particular school, then you're shutting down a grade, you're impacting the class sizes, you're essentially putting in a school in jeopardy. So it's not about the tuition.
So can't we just put a simple clause saying that students can, instead of all this with percentages and everything, saying that we can transfer students as it makes sense for the need of the students and the district, provided that we do not cause significant.
It's that second sentence.
Well, it's that
Yeah.
last sentence that says that.
Yeah, but can't we just sum that up without all the percentages and everything and just leave it that way?
Like I said, I would make sure I consider all the implications, that we don't put something in the draft that then hurts schools that we hadn't considered. And I don't want to speak to that, right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We'll have more study on this.
Okay, community use of school facilities,
One
Christina?
last thing. and
Yes.
On the second page, I didn't know if we were going to go through that each. But
Do you want to? We should.
well, some of it's pretty standard stuff, but the parents and guardians have to request to complete an application between February 1st and 28th. No transfers will be allowed outside this time period. Is that really necessary? Is it because of planning that we need to be so far in advance and be so concerned?
I think that's right from the current policy statewide. I don't know that we have to stick to that. But it is for planning purposes.
My initial thought is I'd rather see us be much more open and flexible, and that's part of the whole thing of being all one consolidated. But I don't want to make it terribly difficult for folks that are, trying to figure out how many staff we need or something. So I didn't know whether that made sense to keep it in.
We could just say this program during a registration period.
That's true. And then we can have flexibility as needed.
Let's try that. Let's have Ron and Ron think about that. Okay, anything else in that section, guys?
And the same thing then about taking out the date on, parents must notify the transfer school by March 1st, so we can take out that date too, so that,
Well, they might,
well, if it's the same consideration, the February thing, if you need the February, you probably need the March, but if you don't need February, it might not be March.
by a certain date, by a predetermined date.
Yeah.
Is that okay, by a predetermined date?
And does this address the next page with athletic or activity eligibility and participation? I know that now, in the high school, we allow in homeschooling and kids that are at private schools. What are the rules now, and are we standing with that, or are we increasing participation with that?
I think that would be the same thing.
So homeschool by law, we accept them into,
Only if there's space.
if there's space.
Yeah.
And that's for any extracurricular music, any band, any sports. And a kid that goes to public or private school is not allowed. Is there ever any consideration for a private school child to be able to pay to do some extracurricular with our BAMs and BUHS, or even with the grade school?
We have private school children from Dummerston in our middle school program. They don't pay. We need them, so, I mean.
So it is practice in one school, but I understand that, I think BAMS does not allow it? Or do you? And BUHS?
Again, I think because of the capacity
Yeah,
issue,
you have
it's not like you can incorporate those kids. In Dummerston, you actually need the kids to feel the team.
Well, so is this written correctly? Each participating school shall treat all enrolled transfer students in the same fashion with regard to eligibility for and participation in athletics and extracurricular activities.
But maybe I'm missing something because it's getting late, but if we're talking about within our own unified district, we're not gonna have there won't be transfer students.
Not transfer, private school and homeschool, kids that aren't actually.
Right, but I think we would just use our current existing policy about that.
Yeah,
And it wouldn't, because the whole thing around athletic eligibility wouldn't necessarily be in effect, would it?
Yeah, this is more based on the current policy where the students from a different districts, or different supervisors.
Right, but what we're talking about in the Articles of Agreement is within our own district. Within our own district, so
This may not apply.
it does.
So maybe this paragraph shouldn't be here, because
Right.
you can't have one thing in Dummerston and another thing going on at BUHS.
But if we have a student from Brattleboro going to Putney, while they're in Putney, they're considered a Putney student. They are eligible to participate in all Putney programs. If Putney charges a fee to play on a team, that student would be charged that same fee.
As if they lived in the borders of Putney.
Right.
Right.
Even though they're living in Brattleboro, they're going to school in Putney, they're included in all of those Putney things as a Putney student.
But if we had a resident of Putney who's going to a private school,
That seems different. This
Right,
is
and
just
so what's different is that Dummerston is saying yes to the private school child, and BUHS and BAMS is saying no.
We're not saying no, we're just saying if there's room, and there's just not room.
Right. If they have.
Because we have a capacity.
So we're taking out this paragraph.
Well, no, this paragraph doesn't actually talk about private school or homeschooled students at all. This is just about
This is just transfers within, and there's no transfers within, because it's one district.
So we're going to modify the paragraph.
Sounds like that's something else that Monica.
Indeed, yeah.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Community use of schools and community use of property. Christina, did you want to touch on this?
There's just been some question, I think, brought up by the Putney forest separation, that we have some fields that are used often by recreation, and a concern from some community members that Dummerston think about it. We haven't had a chance to talk about it as a board, but we have, flat land is pretty rare around here, and we have a lot of athletic fields, and so to subject it to a super board decision or a policy decision where now, you know, it's a town facility.
And who maintains it right now?
Actually, individuals in the town often maintain it.
I thought we
So
already
the school
said that.
doesn't pay for it at all?
Some of the schools, sometimes the school does.
It needs the fields. I mean, it gets it mowed, it's sort of fertilized. I mean, the improvements that have been made have been done by interested individuals through the years. And that's, that one guy in particular, Claude Goen, he continues to, maintain the little league or baseball field and keep it as nice as it is. So, and we've got another parent who works really hard on the soccer field.
Does his own mowing.
Runs.
Didn't we say that the intent is, when I presented this to the Brattleboro group, I just said the intent is for whatever community use is going on, that it would continue?
Yeah, and that's why we just inserted, this is the BUHS policy. All of you have similar policies. We just use the district policy that would essentially maintain those fields for that school.
And the leadership council would, and the staff at that school would be responsible for that and setting the appropriate fee structures, because we mentioned before that BAMS and BUHS is different than what the other schools do.
I think we'd want to look at some consistency on that.
But it also, the first little paragraph there under statement of purpose, the last sentence says, school facilities will be made available with the use in accordance with these procedures. So it's like the school comes up with the procedures that are necessary for that school, for that community, to make procedures that make sense for them.
It's just that in our policies, those procedures are consistent.
Yep.
So what, is that addressing the concern of Dummerston? What's the concern?
Well, I think the concern is why, Putney took their forest out because it's valuable to them. For Dummerston, the fields are valuable to Dummerston, so why are we missing something? And a lot of our sports happen through rec leagues, which are through the town. So right now, it's very clear how that interplay happens with all the rec leagues and all the, adult things that happen. It's a little less clear what's going to change. We have 3 good fields, so what's going to happen? So I think that is the Dummerston concern. That this doesn't necessarily address.
Well, the Putney Forest is big. I mean, like acres.
170
acres. And I guess I thought all of the fields that go with all of our schools just stay with the schools.
Yeah, our rec league works on our fields too.
And our Brattleboro rec is constantly on all of ours and in our school buildings, just like I'm assuming for everybody.
Yeah, I've had Dummerston people talk to me about the school fields, and I didn't really understand it because it is school property. It's not a separate parcel like the urban forest is, but
So do you think school facility policies would ensure that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable. I don't, I have to wait and talk with the local Dummerston board and see if there's consensus there, but I've never imagined it really changing because
is it more of a concern of who maintains it, or the fee of use, or? I'm just throwing those things out there because those are the things you think of when you associate that piece of land up there. And who dictates who uses it, that type of thing.
Right, that's already in place. The athletic director sort of oversees everything, and then there's certain community people that have taken on the responsibility of scheduling play on the different fields, and I didn't think that would change.
So would it help to have something about the history of the use?
Can we just add to the bullets on the authorities of the leadership councils that they will manage all school facilities?
All current.
And that puts it right back on the town-controlled entity.
Provide oversight of all students.
Decision making?
Well, you wouldn't want them to be making decisions because they're making, I'm thinking of like capital expenses and that kind of stuff, but I'm thinking of managing facility use.
Capital expenses is a separate line on there, so managed facility and maintenance.
Yeah? You want to
I
talk
think that sounds good, but
Yeah.
That's just me, so.
No, it's been a concern of our record too, so. Okay, can we keep going? So the last, we're not gonna talk about 15, correct?
Or 16.
No.
Those two are just
Yeah.
kind of add-on to number 2.
So can we quickly talk about the schedule of boards over the next couple of days? Putney's meeting Thursday. Your meeting Monday?
It's Monday.
Brattleboro?
Wednesday.
Right before the Act 46, right?
Yeah, the Act 46 is scheduled for at Vernon.
On Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then it's scheduled again on the 23rd for Vernon.
Why did we do that?
I had it scheduled on May 4th.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, May 4th,
Oh, no.
no, May 3rd. May 3rd, and then
Oh, yeah. Vernon, Act 46 at Vernon.
23rd again for Vernon, but I could be,
Yeah,
I
so I
could
guess
be
I'll-
correct. You have both?
Why don't we go to Vernon? That'd be fun.
Well,
I invite you to Gilbert.
so you guys can try, you guys have to have a meeting before, yeah? Okay.
What happened, what meetings happened that week for the local boards?
Which week?
We have a meeting the next day as a preschool forum, so I don't think you want to try to come
So
back.
Tuesday, can you?
So Putney meets 4/28.
Yeah.
Guilford meets 5/2.
The UHS meets 5/2 also.
Brattleboro meets 5/4.
Okay.
Has to be warned.
Well,
And
you've time for that.
And so I sent our chair email here
Yeah.
saying we need to schedule something, so.
Okay.
So you
maybe
would typically meet on Tuesdays.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, well, our next study committee meeting is the 3rd. I'm wondering if we shouldn't push it back like a day or two.
What if we move the study committee meeting to Thursday, the 5th?
The
I
5th?
cannot do the,
What about moving it out to the next week?
We can, it has to be next week. And I'd like to keep it where it is if we can.
Is there any way for Dummerston to meet ahead of us, or if we back our time up and we meet in Dummerston on the 3rd?
Well, don't we have to warn it appropriately?
We have time to warn it.
Yeah.
You have to have 24 hours.
I'm wondering how we could get through all these articles that we have not read. I'm just, I guess maybe if we could have people read through them, but typically there's an hour we could have beforehand for people to be there, and this is a lot to go through in 1 hour, perhaps. There's always Friday night.
You're not doing anything this weekend, right?
So
We've got lacrosse.
we'll just leave this to you, you guys know what has to happen.
We're going to keep us on the 3rd.
I would like, I think we
And
need to
do we have a
stay on the
location since Vernon?
Can I, this is totally selfish, but my youngest son's birthday is the 3rd, so I won't come.
Oh, well, then.
I mean, it's the one study committee meeting that I will not be here for, because, I mean.
And you can't do the 4th,
yes,
the 5th.
I cannot do that.
So,
Maybe the 4th?
How long is our preschool forum?
Unless we want to move back to 7:30.
no.
Okay, so I cannot do Thursday. I'm working till 7.
The 4th? Okay. Thursday the 4th? Everyone? Wednesday. Sorry,
We have a
Wednesday.
preschool forum on Wednesday the 4th, already scheduled with all sorts of public that goes from 6 to 7.
So then maybe we go 7 to 9,
Yep.
and we can do it there where your preschool forum is.
Is that okay?
That academy.
Okay?
Worth 7 to 9.
Okay.
Where is that?
So that's May 4th, 7 to 9 at Academy. All right?
We're not meeting on this.
So we haven't made any huge changes. We haven't discussed huge changes other than considering the as I'm remembering, other than the Brattleboro, the 9 numbers we're considering, and the 3 versus the 2. It would be really good to get those all into the report and the report out to all of us so that we can share it with our boards. So are you going to put those edits in after the meeting tonight and just email it back to us?
You looking
Or
down
should-
this way?
Yeah, well, can one of you do that, or
I mean, I
do
have-
you want to share, send?
I
I want to
have-
make sure that we have it by tomorrow
Yeah.
night.
I'm not looking at.
So I have some notes.
Yeah,
I need to get some from Amy, Richard,
It's already gone.
and Beth.
yeah, I sent one too.
And just know that, like, some of the stuff on the school transfer, you know, you're not gonna have the final language tomorrow.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So that, I don't think that's crucial to a
Chris,
decision.
yeah, Christina?
We had a request at our meeting that if there's changes, could that language be put in italics, so people who've gotten this copy,
Yeah, it's usually
Excellent
bold.
suggestion.
but this most recent one wasn't, so just, and now there's bold in here with the bold is sort of considered language too,
Well,
so if there can be some way to differentiate and people can know, so when they're reviewing it, they can.
So I think the assumption was that the boards have been looking at this version, so I think the next version would have what's bold, what we discussed tonight.
Okay.
So just so I'm clear, the current bold should not be bold?
That should be more.
Phase that out?
Phase out the
And
bold.
now the new will be bold.
Very good, Ron, it's done very well.
So I know people want to speak, but there are a few things we're going to talk about first before we open it to the public, which I think we need to do because lots of things are happening. This version, it's okay with everyone. We're going to give it to Donna to take a look at. We won't officially release it to the AOE, but does that work for everyone? We'll give it to Donna to look at, tell her it's very close and we've yet to actually vote on it.
Didn't she get a copy of this on Monday?
What's that?
Wasn't she handed a copy of this on Monday? Oh, no, no, somebody else. But everybody came back on Billy was, yeah.
So Ian and then we're, yeah.
Just a note on the bolding, the stuff that we specifically didn't skip, the mud option should probably still be bold, because that's.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I know that if anything's still to be determined, I will leave that bold.
Okay, you prompted, anything before we turn it over to the public to hear from? Good? All right, there were a couple people, Jody first, well, Reed, you actually were first. So Reed, Jody, and then the guy in the back. Okay, Reed, go ahead.
Yeah, my comment is-
Sorry, anyone else? Okay, so.
My comment is actually very safe for all of us, and it's an observation from the process, and that is that ourselves as residents need to have ownership to let go of what we have. It's not, it's something that we have to have time, we have to be afflicted with. It's something that we can't let go of until we know. It doesn't make any difference how much and how good a job a committee does, because it's our school, and we can't let go of it until we know what you're doing. And it's that simple. I'll give you an example from town meeting 35 years ago at Dummerston. Grader was up for $80,000 bond vote was up for grader. 25 minutes of discussion, heated, it was defeated. The next year, the same grader was on the list, no discussion at all, and it passed. The difference was that the community understood what was on the table. So if you can think psychologically to take this divide down between the information that's being passed amongst you and the fact that we don't have it, and we don't have ownership, that helps us all.
Thanks. Jody, and then in the back, and then you guys.
Okay. I am concerned that the Articles of Agreement don't include a few things, and some of the things that you've talked about, and I don't see them in here. We talked about the 7th and 8th graders, and we were talking about not being able to move them unless there was a vote of the town to move the 7th and 8th graders, and I don't see it in the Articles of Agreement. Another one would be no moving of teachers or students without approval from probably the local advisory council or even the community. Then the third one was came up from Scott Beck, who came down to from representatives on the education committee, and he said that there should be a proposed exit strategy. And according to him, he said that it should never be as strict as the one present for our high school issue. And I don't see any exit strategy in here, and I would suggest that we talk about that.
Thanks, Jody. In the back?
Hi, Michael McGillian, resident of Dummerston. I just wanted to, I mentioned this at the Dummerston School Board meeting last night as a member of the public as well. I would just like to see the articles published online. There's tremendous amounts of information that has been disseminated online, but the very important document that we're talking about, presenting to the voters, possibly presenting to the voters for consideration, has not been published online, or I've been able to find it. And the comment I believe that Christina made, or you know, just about what has changed in the document over time. It would be nice to see the current working version. This is it's challenging to understand what it is you're going to put before the voters. I know you're not completely done, but I know I was a little late as well tonight. I'm not sure what model is being put forward. Is it accelerated? Is it a MUD? Is it, I mean, I don't know that you know either, it seems, and skipped right over talking about the two articles that seem to address that within the document itself.
So the articles are online, right off the homepage. There's an Act 46 link. I just went and pulled it up.
Okay.
And it says Articles of Agreement. It's the active working draft at April 6th. So they are up.
This is April 14th.
This is my point, is that it's not updated.
Well, you said they weren't online at all, so I'm sorry. They are there. I guess she hasn't updated the April 14th one. But it's there.
Okay.
You're good?
Go back. Sean Murphy-Gilbert. I was just wondering, are the petitions still going to be at town clerks on Monday?
I don't know if that was the original date. I doubt on Monday, but shortly, assuming,
Well,
depending.
The problem is we don't know exactly what the makeup of the board is, so we can't have petitions until we know what the makeup of the board is.
Right, that's why.
But is there some sort of statutory requirement of how long?
There's a
They have to be back
range.
by the 24th of May.
Oh, okay.
We're still on schedule. I mean, I think that was the earliest day possible available.
Oh, I thought it was the last.
Now,
Change of language.
yeah.
Thank you. Paul Normando, Dummerston. And I'm still concerned that here, there's being a rush to judgment here. There's being a rush to meet a specific date, and there's not enough information, as is obvious, to the committee and to citizens who watch it online or who attend the meetings. Reed made a very excellent point. If you're going to try to convince the voters, they have to have information. Otherwise, you're not going to go anywhere.
Well, if if we vote to send it to the Board of Ed, there will be many forums. And then if they approve it, there would be many forums to discuss this with it. Tom, and then I think we're...
Very quick. There's nothing in what you've written as to how it may get modified in the future. There's no amendment process.
We actually talked about that.
Okay.
At length, actually.
Okay, good.
Does anyone want to speak? Amy, do you want to? That it gets amended by all of the electorate.
Yep. This board cannot.
And it says it in here?
No,
It's statute.
Statute.
And that's statutory.
Mhm.
So who proposes and who? That's all statute? Okay, thank you.
What statute says that? I don't have it in front of me, but
Could you
we can
email
find
me with
We
the
can talk about it
statute?
next week.
Can you
I think
email
I
me
had
before next
distributed
week?
that document from Chris Leopold that spoke about that. I don't think I have it here, but. I'll find it.
We did talk, it might even be in the minutes.
The cites the statute?
Certainly, could we have talked about it before? I will take the time to email you, but I would actually prefer just to let you know next week if that's possible, because I've got a very busy meeting schedule right now. If that's okay, can you wait a week?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Yep.
Yes, I'm Steve Skubniowski. I'm from the town of Vernon. I'm here just as an interested person. I've not really gotten much involvement in this process yet, but I intend to get more involved. One question that I had is, my understanding is this Act was designed to help districts such as these standardize their processes and bring everyone up at the same point, to the same point. On the bottom of page 11, you've got a clause there called discipline. And I just had a quick question about that in relationship to standardization. It says, except as required by law, transfer students under this program are subject to disciplinary policies and procedures of the receiving elementary school. It seems like you have an opportunity to standardize the disciplinary policies and procedures across your union. Are you not planning to do that, or is that going to be kind of a phased-in thing, or how's that actually going to work?
See, I think this part of the document on page, starting on page 10, Article
11.
No, I know, but it starts on Article 13.
Yeah, it starts with work.
All of that is current policy for transferring in from other districts in to a district. So I think we have to look at this because we do have consistent discipline policies. And that's a good example of it. That section may not apply.
Well, then the other thing I wanted to mention, I have meetings in this room sometimes as part of another board that I'm on. The acoustics in here are not very good. You folks, some of you I can hear very clearly, some of you not so much. And if you really want to involve the public, number one, let us know where you're going to have your meeting so that we can get here on time. I ended up going to 3 other buildings before I got to this joint. And the third, the other item I would suggest is either get some kind of speaker system, or when you're talking, speak up so everyone can hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Anything else on you guys? Okay, we're meeting, where are we meeting?
Academy after preschool. Which, by the way, since we're all talking about consolidation, and early Head Start and Head Start does already talk about and deal with kids from the entire community. You might want to come because you have nothing else to do, I know. But the preschool forum is looking at what the future of preschool and how to integrate the different services that are already done by early Head Start and maybe changing
The crossbar.
changing the way we're doing some preschool right now.
Thanks, Joan. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?